Somehow, it's already been about a month since the last gaming pickups video, which means, yeah, it's time for the next one. I apologize if I seem just a little bit out of it or if my energy is a little bit different in this video. Essentially, 2 nights ago, I dealt with a bit of a heat exhaustion, courtesy of the Florida sun. It was a little rough to say the least. Yesterday was definitely still pretty rough in terms of me just trying to recover from all of that. Today, it's a little bit better, but I'm still clearly a little bit out of it. When it comes to speaking, it takes me a little bit to just, thoroughly think my thoughts through and say what I'm trying to say, and even then the words that I'm picking to use in my sentences aren't exactly all the way there. So again, my brain and my body are just a little jumbled, a little out of it. Getting back in the swing of things here. All that being said, we got some video games to talk about, and I will say the amount of video games that I purchased aren't as much as these usual pickups videos tend to have. That being said, the last 2 items costed me a bit more. So in terms of quantity, it's a bit less, but in terms of, cost, it was actually more than usual. So first things first, let's go ahead and go over this one game that actually should have been in the last video, but I just forgot to cover, and that is Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life for the Nintendo Switch. And you're probably noticing here, like, hey, it's still sealed, man, and that's because it was on one of the other subscription services. I forget if it was Game Pass or PlayStation Plus Extra, but usually what I'll do is if there's a game that I want to get physically, I'll still get it physically, especially if I find it for a good price, but I'll keep it sealed if I have a way to play it digitally already. So in the example of this, Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life, I already had a way to play it digitally through, I believe it was PS Plus. So I just went ahead, got the game digitally there, but it was one of those things where, hey, I absolutely love this game. And just to give a little bit of backstory or history to this game, this is actually a remake of a Harvest Moon game from the GameCube, which I have a ton of nostalgia for that one. Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. That game it's a very unique Harvest Moon game, right? Typically, when it comes to the Harvest Moon games, they're more, more gameplay-based, just more about building up your farm, doing the farming thing, but A Wonderful Life always stuck out to me and always pulled at my heartstrings because it's more story-based and it's about you carrying out your wonderful life. I'm not going to spoil it by any means, but man, the ending always puts me in tears, and the remake was absolutely wonderful. It's one of those things where there is a conversation to be had about the differences in the art style and this, that, or the other, and the original art style definitely pulls my nostalgia strings a bit more. That being said, the new art style here definitely doesn't feel out of place, and it still fits in with the tone and the themes of the game, and when it comes to the, the quality of life improvements built into the game, because this is definitely one of those remakes where it wasn't necessarily necessary, but the fact that it happened, they didn't squander the opportunity to improve on some things that could have been improved upon. And as much as I love the original, and I feel that it's perfect in its own way, there was definitely a few adjustments made here, especially when it comes to the farming and, like the shop aspects of the game, to where it was like, yeah, I really appreciate some of the changes that they made here. And if you had to choose between the original or the Story of Seasons version, honestly, you couldn't go wrong with either version. I feel like there'd probably be some merit in playing the original first and then hopping over to the Story of Seasons: A Wonderful Life remake, just to kind of see some of the quality of life improvements, just to kind of, gauge for yourself which art style you prefer more, this, that, or the other. But otherwise, in terms of story, it's basically all the exact same. Oh, and you can actually create your own character here, which is pretty cool, which for a guy like me that plays a lot of RPGs and can spend hours inside of character customizers, this isn't the most in-depth character customizer by any means, but I still always appreciate when those elements are in a game. And yeah, if you're confused as to why the original was called Harvest Moon and this one's called Story of Seasons, essentially there was a bit of dispute between the original developers and publishers, and it's one of those things where the original developer is able to basically make games inside of the same universe, inside of the same continuity, or do full-blown remakes like this. They just have to do it under a different name, that being Story of Seasons. So this is actually like the original Harvest Moon, whereas the new Harvest Moon games are being made by people that didn't make the original Harvest Moon games, therefore they're quite a bit different, so that's just one thing worth noting. Next up, we have another game that is still sealed, and that is Godfall, and that is because I already played this one digitally before. They gave it out with like PS Plus and all that, and they also had a path to where you could, for a cheaper price, it was kind of confusing. So they had the Godfall Challenger Edition with PS Plus, but then from there you had an upgrade path to get the actual game, because the Challenger Edition wasn't actually the game. It basically cut out all of the story stuff and just let you start from end game. It was very weird how they did that. But again, from there, they had a path to where you could get the story and actually play the game as intended. So, again, since they gave it out with PS Plus, I already had a way to, go through and do all that years ago, because that was back in like 2021. However, I found a good deal on this physically a bit ago for like $10, so I was like, hey, I actually really like Godfall. I'm one of the few people that do. I know this game gets dunked on a lot, but I always loved this game, so I decided to pick it up since, again, I found it for like 10 bucks or something like that, brand new and sealed. I was like, hey, I'll add it to the collection. I love Godfall, but since I already had it digitally and since I was already able to experience all that content, I didn't crack this one open yet, but hey, if, you know, it's one of those things where if something happens to my account one day, or if I just, you know, feel like cracking this game open just for the sake of it, because I'm not the type of collector where I just keep all my games sealed. Like, no, of course not. I've said this before. I never have any plans to sell my collection. I buy games to play games, and I'm going to keep these games until the day that I die, and even when I do die, I want them to be passed on to my siblings or somebody else in my family, or to simply be given to another collector out there. You know what I mean? There's no monetary incentive to anything that I collect. It's all sentimental and out of pure passion for wanting to buy, collect, and play these games. That being said, I also like to keep my games in as best of condition as possible, so that's why I keep them sealed, so then they can be in the best condition possible until I want to crack them open and play it, or, you know, something like that. But anyway, next up, oh man, this is a nostalgic one right here, baby. I was so happy to finally pick this one up. I've been going through and recollecting a lot of games in this franchise because I had them back in the day, but whether it be through, you know, different moves or trade-ins to GameStop that I definitely regret now. There's some games that I've purchased, but then sold, and I'm now repurchasing over the years, and this is one of them, that being Transformers Dark of the Moon. Now, it is worth noting that the Transformers games are not necessarily the cheapest games to collect nowadays, simply due to the fact that they are tied to a relatively popular IP, and these games are a little bit older, you know, a little bit over a decade old at this point, and unfortunately a lot of games from that PS3 and 360 generation are starting to go up, especially some of the more popular ones like these licensed tie-in games. I remember specifically, this one came out between the time of War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, which thankfully I do have Fall of Cybertron in my collection already, which that's another pricey one. But right now, you guys are gonna see a pricey pickup from me in the next video because let's just say that your boy does have a War for Cybertron on the way. Whatever you do, do not look up the prices of that game on eBay or Mercari, because yeah, it's not a cheap game. I'm just, you know, again, it's one of those things where I'm going through getting all the Transformers games, because for those that don't know, I'm a huge Transformers a huge Transformers fan. Doesn't matter if we're talking the Michael Bay movies or if we're talking, like, you know, some of the OG like toys and cartoons and such, which is where a lot of that nostalgia lies for me, if I'm gonna be honest, like, primarily, because I mean, the Michael Bay movies, like, you know, they're cool and all. I can't necessarily say that I have nostalgia for them, because they're not, you know, they're not that old in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I definitely do have nostalgia for them, but it's not that deep ingrained nostalgia like I have for the cartoons, since I've been watching those since, you know, I was a real young child. But anyways, yeah, I love Transformers, so I was really happy to pick this one up, and this game is absolutely fantastic. It feels like a nice mishmash of the previously released Transformers movies games, as well as the things that were introduced with like War for Cybertron. So yeah, this game is absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to get my hands on War for Cybertron, because that's another one of those pricey ones out of a lot of the Transformers games. But thankfully, I have my bases covered with a lot of the other ones. I still need to get like the original, just Transformers the game. I need to get that one yet. I already have Revenge of the Fallen, as well as what one of the other ones I forget. I also have all my bases covered on the handhelds for the most part. Like, I have all of the DS Transformers games, so I'm all good there. But yeah, love Transformers. Was really happy to pick that one up. Now, this next game is not in the best of condition in terms of just like the case, but case replacements are rather easy. Well, oh, now that I'm looking at it, I just realized that this one sticker is actually on the box art. Okay, so this was actually a GameStop purchase for me, because, you know, I did sign up for GameStop Pro because I do shop there frequently enough. At least recently I have been, because they have had some pretty quality games at some good prices lately. That being said, oh man, this one, again, it's one of those things where I was able to get it for a bit cheaper because I had my $5 per month coupon, and, well, I'll just go ahead and show it. So, again, the case is, you know, it's fine for the most part up here, and, you know, it's one of those things where, like, a bit of Goo Gone can get that off, but I just realized that this pre-owned sticker is actually on the box art. So what we're gonna do while we talk about this game... Oh, wait, no, it's not actually on the box art. The box art is completely fine, so this could just be a simple case swap on the... Oh my goodness, that is so relieving to know. Okay, so apparently this part, it wasn't actually stuck to the box art ever. It was just kind of slid inside of there, so we're all good, baby. All I gotta do is peel this stuff off, and then we have a perfectly clean copy of Two Worlds. I'm so glad that came off, because yeah, there's like a bunch of cool little like logos down there on the side, but anyways, basically, this is a really nostalgic one for me, and for those that weren't there at the time, this was deemed or touted as being the Oblivion Killer. Now, considering the fact that most of you probably haven't even heard of Two Worlds until this video, Yeah, we all know how that went. That being said, I have always had a soft spot in my heart for Two Worlds. I absolutely adore this game. It is a really fun fantasy-style RPG. And if you've never played the game before, I don't want to say too much about it in order to spoil it for you, but I will say that it definitely does have some of those Oblivion vibes, you know. I mean, again, it is in that like fantasy sort. I mean, you literally see it on the cover, Knight on the Horse. Like, you know what you're getting into here, but it is a really fun game. It also has some online co-op elements. I don't know if the servers are actually online anymore, but you know, that's also a thing there. I don't believe the game ran on dedicated servers, so if it ran like peer-to-peer, which basically every game during this generation did, then I'm sure there's probably like homebrew efforts out there or something like that, or private servers up and running that maybe you could connect to, but I'm happy now, because outside of this sticker and this sticker, which again, I can just use some Goo Gone to get off, that is definitely shelf-worthy right there, a solid copy of Two Worlds, so happy to have that in the collection. And finally, we have one where, similarly, I played this game years ago, but, you know, I did so digitally, and now it's just one of those situations where, like, hey, I found it for cheap, and I absolutely love this franchise, so I decided to finally pick it up to complete my Killzone collection. Yeah, somehow I didn't have this game physically before, but again, like I said, I had it digitally, so, you know, I played this game years ago, played through the campaign, absolutely love playing the multiplayer. Unfortunately, I don't know if the servers are still online for the multiplayer anymore. I believe they're still online for Mercenary, because, I mean, I was literally just playing Mercenary on the Vita, like, a couple of months ago. Hopefully it hasn't been shut down since then. As for Shadowfall, though, I'm not exactly sure if the servers are still online for this game. Regardless, I always adored Shadowfall. The multiplayer was great. The campaign was always a lot of fun. I love the campaign in this game. The campaign in all the Killzone games are great, even the spin-offs like Mercenary and Liberation. This was another GameStop purchase, and thankfully, as you can see, it is absolutely clean, all official there, nothing on the sides, nothing on the fronts or the backs, no Goo Gone required. The disc was in great condition, and after my GameStop coupon, because this was, I forget when I purchased this one exactly. I think it was at the end of last month, but I purchased this around the same time as Two Worlds, so I think it was actually Two Worlds that I got the coupon on, and then this one I ended up just getting a slight discount since I had my pro membership and only had to pay like a couple of dollars for it, so, you know, that was pretty cool. And with that, that is it for the video games, but now we get into the real expensive stuff. There was some, one particularly slightly pricier game in this pile, that being the Transformers game, but now we're moving on to the more expensive stuff, and we're saving the absolute holy grail for last, because there is a holy grail childhood pickup in this video, but we have one that is, it's actually close to being a holy grail, actually, I would say, because I have been waiting to purchase this system for 15 years, believe it or not. I remember back in 2009 when they announced that the DSi was going to be releasing, and I thought that it was such a cool device, because obviously, you know, growing up with like the DS Lite and such, it was crazy to think that we were getting a new DS, like a new spin on that, and despite the fact that the DSi was essentially just a DS Pro and not actually like, you know, a DS2 by any means, we wouldn't get that till 2 years later with the 3DS and then eventually the 2DS and all that. You know, again, it was really cool because there was a bunch of like software upgrades in here, and it actually had like an OS and things you could interact with, because obviously in the original DS and DS Lite, if you even tried to change anything in the settings, you had to turn the system off and turn it back on, and if you try to pop a game out, it would literally just like freeze up the system. So it was really cool, again, having like an actual OS on here to where you could take out a game and it wouldn't just freeze up the system. It was almost like a mini computer in a way, to where it was much more navigatable, more features in here. You had voice recordings, you had a camera on the front and on the inside and all that. You could take selfies, you can mess with like the voice recordings on here. I remember me and my cousins back in the day, because one of my cousins had a DSi, and, you know, my friends at school also had DSis and such. I remember whether I was hanging out with my cousins or my friends that had DSis, we'd always be messing with, like, the voice recordings and such, and it was always cool, like, taking pictures and messing with them with the stylus and all that. And obviously, the DSi was still a part of the DS line of systems, so it still had features like PictoChat and the download play and such. This was definitely a Game Boy Color situation to a lesser extent, though. The Game Boy Color I always viewed as being the second generation Game Boy, even though Nintendo themselves has always said, no, the Game Boy Color wasn't a second generation Game Boy. It was in the same line of Game Boy systems. For me, I don't know, again, there's just so many exclusive games to the Game Boy Color to where it almost felt like an entirely new system, but here with the DSi, there was only a few exclusive games to it in terms of actual physical releases. There was like 3 there with Photo Showdown, the Hair Salon game, and then the other one, the System Flaw, I think it was called. And then obviously you had all the DSiWare and all that, and in terms of other things that were changed with this device, the buttons went from being a little mushy and just, you know, pushy and almost analog feeling like they were in the DS Lite to being more like clicky here on the DSi. DSi. I don't have a preference either way. I do think the clicky buttons are cool and kind of make it feel more futuristic in a way, because it's much more akin to what we would have seen with like the Nintendo Switch, for example. Whereas later on, you know, when you look at a device like the 2DS and went back to like what they did with the like the DS Lite, where the buttons were just like a little more mushy. But again, I don't have a preference either way. Both are completely fine. And you may be wondering like, wow, I haven't seen this color before. I wonder why. And that's because this is actually a Japanese exclusive DSi. For the longest time, I talked about how I wanted to pick up one of those light blue DSis. You already know the one I'm talking about, where it's like, it's not light blue like an ice blue, but it's like a very vibrant light blue. I always wanted to get that one. But it's one of those things where I saw this and I was like, okay, look, I've seen hundreds of those light blue ones in my day, whereas this glossy red one, I only saw like 2 of these on eBay. And even though it's not necessarily rare, it's still Japanese exclusive. I barely see them online, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get this one because those blue ones will always be out there, whereas these red ones I haven't seen as often, so I jumped on it, picked it up, and again, it is Japanese exclusive, so I did have to mod the system. Granted, I am learning Japanese, except I wasn't actually actively trying to learn Japanese at the time of buying this, and even then, I'm not necessarily fluent enough probably to fully navigate the settings and all that in here, so I modded it, changed the system language over to English, so now I can actually read what I'm doing and see what I'm doing. And actually, you know what? Maybe I can read. I can actually read some of the letters on the back here. So that one is ma, ku, no, and then there's some kanji on here, so I can't exactly read some of that. But where we stop, no, and then we got I, ta, wa, I, ya. Like, I don't know what what all this is saying necessarily. Shi, su, mo, su. Call, or no, that one's actually you, and then it gets dragged out to you. So again, I mean, I could keep going there, I could keep reading it, I don't know what it's actually saying. And again, there's some kanji in there, so I'm definitely missing some context because I can't read kanji yet. All in all though, I am very happy with this purchase, and it's awesome to finally have my own DSi after seeing it for so many years and after wanting it for so many years. It is a very beautiful system, and when it comes to playing my DS games, you know, I thought it was going to be one of those things where after making the next purchase that we're going to be talking about, I would always go to that instead, still just for nostalgia's sake. But I have been reaching for this quite a bit just because it's so cool playing the games that I've, you know, put hundreds if not thousands of hours into on the next thing we'll be talking about. You know, just replaying those on the system, it's like, it's the same thing as still a DS, but it's just, I don't know, it feels new and unique in a way just because you're playing it on new hardware, you know? That being said, we have finally arrived to the Holy Grail childhood pickup. Now, I have talked about the Nintendo DS Lite in many videos before, and I have shown off my DS Lite, or what was my DS Lite. Yeah, so the DS Lite that I've had for many years at this point, well, I've had multiple DS Lites at this point. I had one from when I was a child, sold it in 2019 for, you know, GameStop, totally regret that. And then in 2020, 2021, I bought another one, and then, yeah, there was some things that went wrong there just a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, hey, I'm out of a DS Lite, I need a DS Lite now. So I ended up picking up both the DSi, as well as, because if you remember, the last DS Lite I had, that one was black, and I had a bit of, you know, I was kind of like, man, you know, the black is cool and all, but I want the one I had as a child, just to really, you know, lean into that childhood nostalgia. So I finally went ahead, found a listing for my childhood Nintendo DS Lite, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Cobalt Blue and Black Nintendo DS Lite. Just holding it. I'm so happy to finally have this. I've been waiting for years to repurchase this thing ever since I sold it, and now it feels like I've, like, it's like seeing an old friend after a long time, and it came in great condition, except for one tiny little problem. So there was actually a lot of issues getting this thing to me. First, when I bought it, it was supposed to get here within a week, but then USPS lost the package, and it was stuck in one of their facilities for like over a week, and it ended up taking over 2 weeks to get here. So I was very paranoid about heat damage or something like that. And I mean, everything seems fine. However, there is one slight issue which may actually be related to heat damage, and that is the fact that the buttons are responsive, but they require a bit too much, but sometimes they don't always respond, right? Like, I go to push, and most of the time it registers, but sometimes it doesn't. And the only thing is, like, okay, so when I bought it, the seller said that there was no problems with the device. Like, the screens were fine, the buttons were fine, like, everything works as intended. And I mean, I can confirm that, like, yeah, everything for the most part does work as intended. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe the device being stuck in the heat with USPS for that week or so maybe damaged some of the rubbers underneath. I don't know, maybe something deteriorated. You'd be surprised what heat can do to some of these old tech, but thankfully I have a bunch of replacement OEM DS Lite rubbers. Replacing DS Lite rubbers with third-party ones are barely ever a good idea, but if you can get your hands on good OEM ones, it'll feel almost brand spanking new. The only issue is it's pretty hard to come by good OEM ones. And, you know, the third-party ones, they're a little work for most people, but for me, again, since I have that broken DS Lite still from a couple of weeks ago, basically what I did is I took the rubbers out of that. I mean, I didn't have to take anything out because the device is already in multiple pieces. I just had to find it in the pile of scraps and grab it. But all the screws on here are fine except for one, and it's stripped. So what I'm going to be doing, because shortly after I record and edit this video, I'm going to be going to the supermarket and I'm going to buy some Gorilla Glue. And I found this trick online where if you super glue a screwdriver to a strip screw, it'll create enough tension and enough grip for you to be able to loosen up the screw and get it out. So that is a problem with a lot of Nintendo devices, even newer ones like Joy-Cons, where their screws just strip so easily. It has to be intentional, right? Like they intentionally make the screws really easy to strip so then people can't mess with the devices or something. I'm not exactly sure. All I know is that it's really annoying because I've done a ton of DS Lite repairs over the years, and time again I ran into these stripped screws. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out that screw. Hopefully the super glue trick works. I've tried everything else. I've tried the rubber band tactic, the latex glove tactic. I've tried the hammer tactic, the file, you know, where you try to like file the side of it so then you can get like a flathead in there. It wasn't filing down. So super glue is sort of my last resort. If that doesn't work, then I'm just gonna simply stick with the device and use it as is, I guess, because it's kind of hard to show on camera. But like, if I have to be very particular about the way that you see even there, like how some of my presses, like I'm clearly pressing up right now, and it doesn't actually go up unless I put a good bit of pressure on it. You know what I mean? Like right here, I'm doing a number of presses and it's just not going up until I really put a bit of force on it. So while it works and it's fine, I'm the type of gamer where I'm not very hard on my tech. Like I have a pretty soft press, if that makes sense. Like I don't know. I take it chill. I like to be chill when I'm playing. I mean, sure, sometimes I really get into it. My presses will get a bit harder, but I like to just do light presses. Take it easy on the rubber so I don't wear things down over time and just be chillaxed with it. But yeah, sometimes, unfortunately, that means my presses aren't being registered when they definitely should be, because I've played on dozens of DS Lites over the years, and I can tell you that, yeah, the amount of pressure I'm putting down should be enough to register. So hoping the super glue trick works, and if that doesn't work, then I guess I'll just kind of deal with it. And if I'm going to be honest, there's a part of me that might just say screw it and end up buying another blue DS Lite at some point just to get that perfect one, or get one that doesn't have strip screws so then I can replace the rubbers, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm pretty happy with this one because the screens are in great condition. Like, there isn't any yellowing to them, which is a huge problem. Hold on. Yeah, I'm trying to turn it on. Like, there's not any yellowing to the screens or anything. I don't know how well you guys can see that. Yellowing is a huge issue with some of these earlier DS models, even some of the DSIs, for example. So I was really glad that the screens are in great condition, but again, I might end up making another purchase down the line if the super glue trick doesn't work, but we'll see. I gotta open this baby up anyway. I didn't realize there was a couple nicks there on the bumper there, and thankfully I do have replacement bumper buttons from my previous DS Lite, so I'm just gonna swap out the shoulder buttons while I'm at it. But anyway, that is it for this pickups video, and it sounds like somebody's doing some weed whacking outside. Hopefully the microphone isn't picking it up, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's really taking me off, and I kind of want to go sock him in the jaw, but hey, it's alright. I'll have some more pickups on the way here soon, as usual, as always, so look forward to that, and that'll be coming out in about a month or so, because I like to, you know, get a good collection of things before I make one of these videos. So probably sometime in the middle, towards the end of October, we'll do another one of these, and yeah, I already got some great stuff lined up. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But anyway, as always, massive shout out, thank you to all the patrons and channel members. Thank you to all you in low ball tier, name your shout out, thank you to the big ball tier, my last game is dead man, and the channel on GT run events on the GT. Thank you, yes, some of you guys are literal legends. I love you. Have an amazing day, stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.